BAM Radio Network.
Interacting with people usually is not a high priority event for a child on the spectrum, but I could certainly see where music could in some ways bridge that gap.
Welcome to Music and Learning. I am Marianne Harmon. Welcome, Dr. Willis. To begin, would you please tell our audience a little bit how children with autism spectrum disorder engage with music, and can music serve as a vent for pent-up emotions?
Having worked with children with autism spectrum disorder for the last 30 years, I think it's absolutely critical that any discussion around autism spectrum disorder be couched in the understanding that no two children with autism are exactly alike. But it has been my professional experience that music in many ways is the first way that you can really get a child with autism spectrum disorder to connect. In lots of cases, in fact, 40% of the children with autism are nonverbal, and yet music sometimes bridges that gap. I have used music to help a child calm down who had severe forms of on the spectrum, and then I have also used music with a more moderately involved child to help them not only relax, but to help them learn new information. For example, we took the song Three Blind Mice, or if you want to be politically correct, Three Visually Challenged Mice, and we added words to it for a little boy to help welcome him to the classroom. And every day when he would come in the classroom, we would sing the little song to him, and he got to where instead of screaming when he got out of the car and headed into the classroom, he would walk into the classroom and say, sing the song, and everybody then, the teacher or the teacher's assistant, would get down on his eye level and sing the song. And one day he came into the building and the teacher wasn't there, and he was very confused, and he was starting to get upset, and the principal walked out of his office, put his arm around the little guy, and leaned down and started singing the song to him. So I think it's definitely a phenomenal link for children who respond to music.
That's a beautiful story and an exceptional principle, too. It would seem that children with autism would react differently to music depending on if it was one-on-one or in a group setting. Is this true? And please elaborate.
Well, I think a lot of it really depends on the child, because traditionally children on the spectrum don't like group settings. They are not overly comfortable in any high-demand situation. Therefore, it may not be the music that is upsetting them as much as it is the proximity of other children. I believe that every classroom that has a child on the spectrum should have a quiet center, a place in the back where the child can go to get away from all the sensory stimulation. And in that quiet center, many times I have played Mozart, I have played Beethoven, I have played music that is very soft and very comforting. And I have seen children that would go back there very escalated, and the music would be very, very comforting for them. I have also seen music, linking music. One of the issues that we have with children on the spectrum is they typically have what we call these stereotypical behaviors, such as flapping their hands or twisting their hair, or in some cases, stereotypical motor-type movements. And one of the strategies that works, especially with younger children, is to take a song that they like. For example, a little boy I worked with, his song that he absolutely loved was what is a song that we use a lot in preschool called the Sammy song. And so we taught him that only when he heard the Sammy song could he stand up and flap his hands. And we used it as a motor activity for everyone. When the Sammy song is on, everybody in the classroom can stand up. When the Sammy song goes off, everybody sits down and goes back to their center or back to doing whatever task they were supposed to be doing. So in his instance, we paired a non-desirable behavior with something that he enjoyed in a way to try to cut down the non-desirable activity.
So is there an attraction to music for autistic children, do you think, because of music's structured regularity?
And there are really two schools of thought on that. In fact, a couple of years ago, there was a group out of Silver Spring, Maryland, the National Music Therapy Association, who actually devoted a portion of their conference to a discussion around, what is it about music that can be beneficial for children with autism? And the two schools of thought that are sort of emerging is that, one, because children with autism are especially fond of patterns, and we know they really like patterns, then it suggests that because of this inclination toward creating patterns, that the music is somewhat structured, it is somewhat predictable, and it provides anticipated patterns for them that are within their comfort zone. Another school of thought is that for them, because of their extreme sensory overload, that music can be a way to tune out all of that sensory overload. I mean, if we think about ourselves when, music can be very calming if the lights are low, or, if we're in another setting and music is loud and abrasive, it can really wake us up. And so there is probably more of a tendency of children on the autism spectrum to gravitate more toward soft music, although I worked with a young man who was very attracted to the musical beat in rap music. And we had a tremendous challenge in finding developmentally appropriate rap music for him to listen to. And we ultimately went to some friends of ours who wrote various pieces of music and were able to get Thomas Moore to write a Three Bears rap song for him that he could listen to. But he really liked that structured beat, and I think a lot of it was because it was filtering out a lot of that sensory input.
I read something about a study where they thought that sometimes it could hypnotize them into a type of lethargy, and then they become oblivious because they get so focused on the music.
Well, and anything can do that. I mean, it can be a ceiling fan, it can be a drip from a faucet, it can be a particular picture in the classroom, it can be a particular toy that lights up in a certain way. I mean, I knew one child that could literally sit for hours and turn a toy car upside down and just watch the one wheel go round and round and round. So again, because of the nature of autism is that there does sometimes tend to be an extreme attachment to the point of being out of touch with everything going on around them. Anything would be a candidate for that, whether it be music or whether it be a specific toy. More the case, what I have found is that we really have to monitor and make sure that no behavior or no item or no activity is becoming such that the child is so absorbed in it they really cannot participate in the rest of the routine.
Well, an interesting anecdote that I read was about a therapist that was using music with a child who had no functional communication. Yet she had songs in her head. And when the therapist found that when she didn't play the last note, not only did the child say the correct word, but she sang it at the right pitch. Can you comment on the reasons for that? And do you have any anecdotal stories to share that would be similar?
I certainly have seen, as I said at the beginning of the interview, many times it is music that provides another link, another connection to communication. And it would be my theory that it is about the patterns. Patterns are so important to a child with autism. It would be more about the child recognizing and knowing this is the word that comes next, this is the part of the song that comes next, and therefore was able to provide a piece of the pattern as opposed to really providing a true communication. Because what we find is that a number of the children on the spectrum are what we call non-functional in their language. For example, they will repeat a phrase over and over, or they will be able to fill in the blank on a song or fill in the blank on a poem. Yet if you ask them to define that word or use it in another context, they can't. And because children on the spectrum do not generalize well, I think it is more about recognizing the patterns of music.
Well, before leaving, Dr. Willis, will you share with our audience some recommendations on how they could use music with the children in their lives who may have an autistic spectrum disorder?
Certainly. I would certainly look at some of the resources that are out there. AutismAsperger.net provides some interesting research about children and music. I also think the National Music Therapy Association, it's the American Music Therapy Association, built in Silver Spring, Maryland, offers some very interesting perspective on music. I also not only used music and combined it with movement to try to help with behavior. But I also think it can be used as a teaching tool, just like I mentioned earlier, where we would sing to this child a version of a song that was familiar to him. I think that is useful. And then with another little girl, we took the song The Farmer in the Dell because she loved it and she would always stand up and move her body and laugh when that would come on. We took that, and instead of using the traditional words, we put in her name and address, so that is actually how we taught her how to give her pertinent information. Is whenever you ask her name, she would start singing The Farmer in the Dell, but she would sing it with the words, hello, my name is Sarah, hello, my name is Sarah, hello, my name is Sarah, and I live on, whatever street she lived on. So I think music can be an important sensory tool for us to use with children on the spectrum, and I also think it can be an important tool for helping them take some of those beginning steps to control their own behavior.
Well, thank you for being here today. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And if you'd like more information on this topic, please click on the forum button. Thank you. You've been listening to Music and Learning with Marianne Harmon. Thanks for listening.
This program is produced by Jack Street Media and is part of the affiliate Nanocasting Network. Thanks for listening.